Zariel stood on the glowing stage, her long silver hair floating behind her like stardust. The crowd of thousands screamed her name. She smiled the same perfect smile she gave every night, but her eyes were tired, her body ached, her legs felt heavy, and behind that smile, she was hiding something no one could know. She was pregnant, not just with any child. The baby inside her was a mix of two worlds, hers and a human's, and if her people, the Zindari, ever found out, they wouldn't call her a star anymore. They'd call her a disgrace, a threat, a target. Zariel sang her last note and the lights faded. The stage went dark, but her pain only grew. She held her stomach lightly and walked backstage, trying not to show her weakness. The crew bowed as she passed, afraid of her powers. But not one of them dared ask how she was feeling. No one cared about the idol. They only cared about the image. In the hallway, a human technician named Elias stood. Near the back wall, he wore simple gray overalls, and his job was to fix lights and clean wires. He wasn't supposed to speak to her, but he always watched from a distance, not as a fan, but as someone who noticed the way her hand sometimes touched her belly, the way her breath shook when no one was looking. That night, she made it to her private room and locked the door. The walls were thick, but not enough to hide the sound when she suddenly fell to the floor. A thud, followed by a small cry of pain. Elias heard it. He hesitated. Every rule said do not interfere, but something stronger than fear pulled him forward. He ran to her door and knocked. No answer. Zariel. He asked quietly, still silence. Then a whisper, weak and barely clear. Go away. He ignored it, overriding the lock with his toolkit. He pushed the door open and saw her collapsed beside a golden chair, clutching her stomach, her skin pale. Her voice trembled. You're not allowed in here. I know, Elias said gently. Kneeling down beside her, I'll leave if you want, but I think you need help. Her eyes widened in fear. Not because of him, but because someone had seen her like this, broken, tired, exposed. I can't let them see, she whispered. My child. They'll kill it. Elias's breath caught. He understood instantly. This was bigger than any concert or performance. This was life and death. Don't worry, he said. You don't have to do this alone. She looked at him like he was speaking another language. For so long, she had hidden everything. She trusted no one. She believed no one would ever help her without a price. Why? She asked, her voice breaking. You don't even know me. Elias hesitated. I know what it's like to be alone, he said, and I know what it means when someone finally says, you're not alone anymore. Tears filled her eyes. The most feared idol in the galaxy. Crying in front of a human, she reached out slowly, testing him. He didn't flinch. He took her hand, warm and trembling. I need to get you out of here, Elias said. If they find you like this. She nodded weakly. He helped her up, wrapping her cloak around her shoulders. Hiding the small bump, they moved through hidden maintenance tunnels beneath the concert hall. No cameras, no guards. Only darkness. As they walked, her legs almost gave up again. Elias lifted her carefully. He had carried equipment heavier than her, but never someone this important. This fragile, Zariel leaned her head on his shoulder. You're the first person to touch me. Without fear, she whispered. They reached a secret exit and stepped into the cold alien night. Zariel looked back at the glowing tower behind them, the place that had made her a star, but never a person. And now, she was no longer theirs. She belonged to no stage, no empire, just a scared mother, and a human who had chosen to care. Their journey had just begun, and neither of them knew what price would come for this one act of kindness. But in that moment, under the alien sky, Zariel finally felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, *, the alien night air was cold. Zariel's breath fogged in front of her as Elias helped her down a narrow street lined with broken lights and quiet shadows. They had left behind the lights, the crowd, and the fame. Now, all that remained was silence and the slow, careful sound of 2 footsteps in the dark. Zariel had always been strong on stage, in front of cameras, even when her body screamed in pain. But now, each step felt heavier. Her legs trembled, her arms clutched her belly protectively, and the weight of her secret grew with every heartbeat. Elias didn't speak much, but every time Zariel stumbled, he caught her without hesitation. Every time her breath quickened, he slowed down with her. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even important. Just a backstage worker with a kind heart and steady hands. They reached an old storage facility in the human zone, a part of the alien city where no Zendari ever went. The buildings were rusted, the lights dim, but here, no one asked questions, and that made it safe. Elias opened a back door with an old access card and guided her inside. It was nothing fancy, just a small room with blankets, tools, and a cot pushed against the wall. But to Zariel, it felt like a hidden world. He helped her sit down. Her body relaxed as she leaned back against the wall. Her head tilted up, eyes half closed for the first time in months. Oh, she could breathe. "You can rest here," Elias said quietly. "No one will find you. Not here." She looked at him, confused. "Why are you doing this?" She asked, "Why would a human risk so much for someone like me?" Elias sat across from her on the floor. He shrugged. "Because you needed someone?" He said simply, and I was there. Zariel didn't know what to say her entire life. People wanted things from her: money, fame, power, beauty, but not Elias. He wasn't looking at her like an idol. He was looking at her like a person, and that was more frightening than anything else. She pulled the cloak tighter around herself. "My child." "It's not full Zendari," she whispered. "I hid it. Because our laws say it's a crime." Elias's face didn't change. "I guessed," he said. "You don't have to explain to me. I'm not here to judge." Zariel's voice cracked. "I thought I could be strong enough to protect my baby, but I'm not. I'm scared every day. I live in fear that they'll find out, that they'll kill us both." Her voice broke. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she covered her face. Elias moved beside her slowly and offered her a cloth. She took it, her fingers brushing his. "You are strong," Elias said, "but even strong people need someone. Even stars need a sky to shine in." She laughed softly through her tears. "That's the worst line I've ever heard," she said. "But thank you." That night, Elias cooked her a simple human meal from old supplies, nothing fancy, just warm and filling. Zariel ate slowly, her hands shaking. She had never tasted human food before it was salty, soft, and surprisingly comforting. Afterward, she sat by the small heater, her hands on her stomach. The baby kicked gently. Her eyes softened. "I don't even know if it'll survive," she whispered. "My kind. They don't mix well with humans." Elias looked at her with quiet determination. "Then we'll make sure it does," he said. No matter what, they didn't sleep much that night. Elias stayed awake, watching the door, listening for any signs of danger. Zariel lay curled up under a thick blanket. She didn't say it aloud, but deep inside, something had changed for the first time. She believed she might actually make it out alive. The next morning, news was everywhere. Zariel missing? Government denies involvement. Where is the galactic idol? Massive reward offered for any information. Her face appeared on every screen, and her people began to search, not to rescue her, but to silence her. Elias turned off the nearest monitor and looked at Zariel. "We need to move soon," he said. "They'll start scanning every zone, even here." Zariel nodded. She wasn't the same woman who had collapsed in the dressing room. She was still scared, but not frozen. She had something to fight for, someone to protect, and someone who believed in her without wanting anything in return as she packed a few things. She turned to Elias and asked, "Why don't you run? You could walk away now and no one would blame you." Elias smiled faintly. "Because I don't run from people who need me," he said. "And right now, you're the one who needs someone." She looked at him for a long time, then whispered, "Then, I hope you don't change your mind." Outside, the streets were waking up. Ships flew overhead. Scanners buzzed in the distance. But deep in that small room, something rare had begun. Not romance, not rescue, but trust, and trust was the first step to survival. The cold metal streets of the alien city were no longer quiet. They buzzed with patrols, scanners, and air drones floating overhead. Every building had blinking lights, and every screen showed one face as Ariel's, the galaxy's brightest. Idol was missing, and the reward for her return grew higher by the hour. But not all wanted to bring her back alive in a forgotten corner of the city. Zariel moved quietly through the narrow alleyways. Elias walked beside her, always keeping one step behind. Watching the shadows, her hood was pulled low, hiding her glowing violet eyes and silver hair. But her fame wasn't easy to hide. Her face was known in every sector, every ship, every planet. And now she wasn't just a celebrity, she was a fugitive. They entered an underground tunnel, dark, damp, and filled with rusted pipes and flickering lights. Ariel stumbled slightly, placing a hand on the wall for balance. Elias reached for her arm quickly, steadying her. "You all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, but her breath was short. "The baby is restless," she whispered, "maybe scared." Elias helped her sit on a broken crate for a moment. "We'll stop soon, I promise," he said. "But we can't stay here, not with patrols this close." Above them, footsteps echoed in scanner. Beams searched the streets. Zariel looked up, her hands shaking slightly. "I never thought it would come to this," she said. "I was loved by billions, but now they hunt me like I'm some kind of danger." Elias knelt beside her. "They fear what they don't understand," he said. "You're strong, Zariel, but you don't have to carry this alone anymore." Zariel turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you know why I didn't run before? 'Cause I believed no one would come with me." He held her gaze. "I'm still here," Elias said. "And I'm not going anywhere." They continued deeper into the tunnels. Kite guided her through old maintenance shafts he used to repair when he worked here. Years ago, no one remembered them now except him. Suddenly, they heard a loud metallic clang behind them. Zariel froze. Elias grabbed her hand. "Keep moving," he whispered. Voices echoed through the tunnels. "Thermal scans show movement down here. Could be a rat or the idol herself." They ran, Zariel's breath uneven. Elias leading the way. They reached a lower level where water dripped from overhead pipes. Elias spotted an old door and forced it open, helping Zariel inside just in time. He pulled a metal shelf in front of it and held his breath. Outside, boots stomped past Scanner's word, but they didn't stop. Elias leaned back against the wall. Exhausted, Zariel sat on the floor, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked at him. "You saved me again," she said quietly. Elias smiled. "I said I would." They were safe for now, but it wouldn't last long. Later that night, they reached an abandoned station near the edge of the human district. It was a forgotten place, with shattered glass and broken chairs, but there was warmth, and a small fire from a power cell Elias had salvaged. Zariel lay down, her head resting on folded clothes. Elias sat nearby, keeping watch, but he couldn't help stealing glances at her, not because she was beautiful, but because she looked human. Not an idol, not a weapon, just a woman trying to protect her child. She stirred suddenly, a cry slipping from her lips. Elias rushed to her side. Zariel. Her eyes opened, frightened. "A dream?" she whispered. I was on stage. Again, but no one could see me. I was singing, but my voice was gone. They only saw the child inside me, and they turned their backs. Elias touched her shoulder gently. You're not invisible, he said, not to me. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded slowly. There was something heavy in her heart. But his presence made it lighter. The next morning, danger. Returned an old vendor recognized Elias's face from a security feed and sent a report to the local guards. Within minutes, trackers picked up the heat signature from the station. Red lights blinked, sirens buzzed in the far distance. They were coming. Elias rushed inside. They found us, he said. Zariel stood quickly, her cloak in hand. I won't slow you down, she said. I'll run if I have to. No, Elias replied. We stick together. Always. Outside, ships circled low. But Elias knew one last way out, an old transit tunnel that led directly to the industrial zone. No cameras, no scanners, just danger and darkness. They slipped away just minutes before the soldiers arrived, and as they disappeared into the shadows. Again, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a runaway story anymore. This was war, not with guns and armies, but with fear, judgment, and survival. And in that war, one human stood beside a pregnant alien idol, not because he had to, but because he chose to. The safe house wasn't much to look at. It was buried beneath a warehouse in the human sector, hidden behind rusted crates and forgotten machines. But to Zariel, it felt like a fortress. No cameras, no guards, no voices whispering her name, just silence and safety Elias had taken her through old industrial tunnels, helping her climb and crawl through broken vents. Her body was weak, her feet swollen, and her baby kicked more than ever. But they made it. Together, they made it inside the safe house. A soft yellow light glowed from an old solar lamp. The walls were made of thick steel and layered insulation. A small cot stood in the corner with folded blankets and fresh clothes, human clothes. Someone had been preparing this place for a... While Zariel sat down slowly, her eyes scanning every corner. Whose place is this? She asked, her voice quiet but curious. Elias looked over his shoulder while checking a storage unit. A friend, he said. She used to work with me. Before she joined the resistance? Resistance. Zariel blinked. You mean people who fight against your own kind? And mine? Elias nodded. Not all humans follow orders blindly, he replied. Some of us just want to help those who need it. She looked down at her hands. I don't know who I can trust anymore, she whispered. My own people would destroy me just to protect their image. He placed a warm drink beside her and sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. You trusted me, he said softly. That's something Zariel didn't reply, but her eyes softened. That night, she couldn't sleep. The baby shifted inside her again and again. It was restless-like. It felt the danger. She sat up and stared at the wall across from her. Her thoughts ran wild. She remembered the night she first learned she was pregnant. She was on a star cruiser, traveling between planets. The medbot gave her the result and quickly shut down, refusing to log the data. It had been a secret from that moment on. She never told the child's father. He was a human soldier who had been assigned to her protection briefly. They had shared one night, one moment of real connection when she felt more than a tool or a weapon. He disappeared during a mission days later. She never saw him again, never even knew if he lived. The pregnancy changed everything. Suddenly, the perfect image the galaxy loved was a risk to the Zindari Empire. They would never allow a mixed child to live, too unpredictable, too impure. Zariel looked down at her belly. I will protect you, she whispered, no matter what I have to do. Elias watched her from across the room. He could feel her pain without needing to hear the details. In the morning, he made them a simple breakfast, nutrient bars and tea. It wasn't much, but it warmed her hands, You said you worked with the Resistance, Zariel asked as she sipped slowly. What happened? Elias leaned forward, his voice steady. I used to be a soldier too. I followed orders like everyone else until I saw what we were really doing, hurting the weak, protecting the powerful. He took a deep breath. I left. I couldn't be part of that, but leaving made me a traitor to some, and a ghost to others. Zariel studied him quietly. You risked everything. Just to help me, she said. You don't even know me. I know enough, Elias replied. I know what it's like to be used and forgotten. I know what it's like to be hunted for doing the right thing. She nodded, then asked something she hadn't asked anyone in years. Can I sing? Elias blinked in surprise. Of course, he said. Why? She smiled faintly. Because my child has never heard my voice. Not truly. And if anything happens to me, I want the baby to remember me by something good. She closed her eyes. Her voice rose gently, soft as a feather, but clear as light. No crowds, no music, no lights, just her, singing in the quiet of a safe house. Elias listened, frozen. Her voice wasn't just beautiful lit, was raw, broken, full of sorrow and love. It wrapped around the air like a blanket, and in that moment, the safe house didn't feel cold anymore. When she finished, silence returned, even the hum of old machines seemed to fade away. Elias didn't say anything. He just smiled. Zariel looked at him and whispered, Thank you for letting me be me, but outside, beyond the steel walls and hidden doors. The Zindari were getting closer. Drones were already searching the lower zones. One wrong move, and the silence would turn into screams. For now, though, they had one more day, one more chance to survive, one more song to sing in the dark. Zariel stood by the safe house window, staring at the pale morning light that slipped through the dusty cracks. Her hand rested gently on her stomach, feeling the soft kicks inside. The child was moving more than usual. She whispered, You're ready to come into a world that doesn't want you. But I'll change that. I'll make a place for you. Behind her, Caius checked a box of supplies, basic medical kits, water, rations, and tools. He had barely slept. Not because he was tired, but because the calm was too quiet, and quiet never lasted long in their situation. Zariel, he said, his voice calm but serious. We have to move again. The patrols are getting closer. They're sweeping entire sectors. This place won't stay hidden for long. She turned to him slowly. I'm not afraid anymore. She said, not because the danger is gone, but because you gave me something stronger than fear-hope. Elias gave a faint smile. I'm glad I did. But we still need to be smart. He helped her gather what little they had. Then he led her to the back wall where an old freight door stood rusted shut. With some effort, Elias forced it open, revealing an underground path full of pipes and steam. It wasn't comfortable, but it was the only way out unnoticed. They began their journey through the tunnel. The air was thick, and metal groaned beneath their steps. Zariel's breathing became heavier with each minute. Her body was nearing its limit. Elias. She paused, holding onto a rail, I think. It's starting. He turned quickly. Are you sure? She nodded, sweat forming on her forehead. I've felt this before, but now, stronger. Elias looked around urgently. There's a scrapyard not far from here, abandoned years ago. We can hide there and prepare for the birth. He helped her move as quickly as possible. Every step was a battle. Zariel held back cries of pain, not wanting to slow him down, but Elias never left her side, not even for a second. They reached the scrapyard, a massive field of old alien ships, twisted metal, and forgotten machines. The air was dusty, but there were hidden corners and old cabins to hide in. Elias found one with working power, an old pilot's lounge, half broken but private. He cleared space on a padded bench, laid down clean cloth, and helped Zariel sit. She collapsed onto the surface, her body trembling. Elias. I'm scared, she whispered. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. Elias knelt beside her, holding her hand tightly. No one plans for this, he said gently. But I'm here. You're not alone. We'll do this together, Zariel screamed softly as the pain came in waves. Her claws dug into the bench, her eyes full of tears. But she didn't break. She endured. Elias remembered his training basic medical aid from his military days. He used the old med kit, cleaned her. Skin kept her breathing steady. You're doing great, he whispered. Just keep going. You're almost there, outside. The scrapyard echoed with the sounds of distant ships and moving patrols. But Elias blocked it out. Right now, nothing mattered more than keeping her safe and bringing that child into the world. After hours of struggle, pain, and fear, a soft cry filled the air. Zariel lay back, exhausted but smiling. Elias held a small, wriggling bundle in his hands. Wrapped in cloth, the baby had soft, silver-tinged skin and faint human features. Tiny, beautiful, and alive. Elias looked at Zariel, his eyes wide with emotion. You did it, he said. She's perfect. Zariel took the baby in her arms, her hands shaking as she pulled the child close. The baby's eyes fluttered open, violet like her mother's, but calm like Elias. She's everything, Zariel whispered. I thought I'd be too broken to love her, but the moment I saw her, I forgot the fear. Elias sat beside them, still catching his breath. I've seen a lot in my life, he said, but nothing like this. Suddenly, their moment was interrupted. A loud mechanical buzz echoed from the scrapyard edge. Drones. Soldiers, the search party had arrived. Zariel's eyes widened. We can't run now, not with her. Elias looked around, then quickly began covering the entrance to the cabin with old parts and metal scraps. He spoke fast but steady. Stay quiet. Hold her close. I'll handle the rest. She tried to protest. You can't fight them alone. Elias gave a soft laugh. I'm not planning to fight, he said. I'm planning to distract. He handed her a small device, a pulse scrambler. It'll block their scans for a while, but only if they don't come too close. Zariel gripped the baby tighter. Elias moved toward the scrapyard entrance. His hand rested near his old plasma sidearm, just in case. Zariel watched him go, her heart heavy with fear and hope. He had done so much already, and now he was risking everything again. Not for duty, not for reward, but for love. The love of a human who saw an idol not as a star, but as a mother and a child, once unwanted by the galaxy. Now had someone willing to protect her, no matter the cost. Asterisk, the scrapyard buzzed with movement. Drones hovered above rusted ships, scanning with cold red light. Boots crushed the dry metal ground as soldiers spread through the wreckage. They were Zindari enforcers, silent, fast, and deadly. They didn't come to talk. They came to clean up a problem, and that problem was a mother, her newborn child, and a human who had dared to care. Elias crouched behind a large, broken shuttle. His ears sharp and body tense, he could hear their voices. Sector 3. Clear. No signs yet. She's close. I can feel her psionic trace. He tightened his grip on the old plasma pistol. It was outdated, but it still worked. He had no plan to win, only to stall, to mislead, to give Zariel and her baby a chance. Back in the scrap cabin, Zariel sat on the cold floor, her back against a crate. The baby lay wrapped in cloth on her chest, quiet now, almost like she understood the danger outside. Zariel whispered, I was afraid to meet you. Now I would die to protect you. She activated the small pulse scrambler Elias had given her. The device blinked softly, hiding their heat signatures. But she knew it wouldn't last forever. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the yard. A burst of plasma fire, followed by shouting. Zariel closed her eyes, holding the baby tight. She knew what it meant. Elias was out there, fighting for them. Elias moved fast between the wrecks, firing. Warning shots not to hit, but to draw attention. His goal wasn't to kill. His goal was to be seen, and it worked. The soldiers turned toward him. There, human contact. Get him. He led them on a chase through the scrapyard, sliding under broken ship hulls. Climbing over twisted panels, one blast grazed his leg, and he stumbled behind a pile of debris, breathing hard. He pulled out a small cum device and whispered, "They found me, Zariel. I've bought you time, but not much." There was silence at first. Then her voice, shaky but strong, came through. "You can still run, Elias. You don't have to die for us." He smiled softly, even as pain burned. In his leg, "I'm not running. I'm right where I need to be, inside the cabin." Zariel felt the words hit her heart. Tears filled her eyes, but she couldn't afford to cry now. She looked down at her baby, who stared back with calm, violet eyes. The baby wasn't crying. She was watching. Like she already understood the world. Suddenly, the pulse scrambler blinked red. Its power was dying. Zariel knew it was time to move. She placed the baby gently in a sling around her chest, wrapped tight and close. Then she stood up, her legs still weak from labor, but her spirit solid as stone. She took one deep breath and opened the door. Outside, the air was thick with heat and smoke from recent blasts. In the distance, she saw flashes of light. Elias still distracting them. She walked slowly but steadily, using the shadows and metal piles as cover. Every movement was pain, but every step was for her daughter. A sudden noise behind her, as Indari soldier had spotted her. "There she is." Zariel turned, her eyes glowing faintly, for the first time since her escape. She let her voice rise, not a scream, not a song, but a wave of energy. Her tone was soft, but powerful, an ancient Zindari note that vibrated through the air. The soldier froze, clutching his head. The sound pierced through his helmet like a blade of emotion. He dropped to his knees. Dazed, Zariel ran again, holding her baby close. The child didn't cry. She only blinked, listening to her mother's song of survival. Near the scrapyard exit, Elias leaned against a beam, his face pale from blood loss. He saw her coming, and for a second, he forgot the pain. "You made it," he whispered. Zariel knelt beside him. "You're hurt," she said, pressing her hand on his leg. He grinned. "Yeah, but I bought you time, didn't I?" More footsteps approached, too many to fight. Zariel stood, her voice trembling. "Then we do it together." She raised her voice again, this time. A lullaby, but not just for her child. For Elias, for herself, and for the soldiers coming toward them. The melody stopped the first wave. The Zindari paused, confused. Some lowered their weapons, unsure what they were feeling. In their minds, they saw memories, warmth, safety, childhood. Zariel's song touched emotions they had long buried. Elias pulled himself up with her help. They began walking, slow but proud. And the soldiers didn't stop them, not because they couldn't, but because something had changed. In the face of fear, in the center of war, a human and a Zindari mother stood together, and the baby in her arms blinked at the world, born in the middle of battle, but surrounded by love. The stars above the scrapyard were quiet. No music, no explosions, no cries, just silence. Zariel stood beside Elias as the cool night air touched her skin. Her baby slept peacefully in the sling wrapped against her chest. The Zindari soldiers, who once hunted her, now stood still, confused. Some even moved. Zariel's lullaby had not been just a song. It had been a memory, a forgotten sound buried deep inside even the coldest soldier, a melody that reminded them of home, of love, of something greater than orders. None of them spoke. None fired a shot. They just watched, and slowly, without resistance, Zariel and Elias walked out of the scrapyard. No longer fugitives, just a mother and a man, carrying a life that had already changed the galaxy. 2 days later, the news channels across hundreds of systems exploded with headlines. Zariel returns with a human and a child. Galactic idol breaks silence, breaks rules, and breaks hearts. Mixed blood baby at center of debate, war or unity. Reporters shouted questions, fans cried, leaders argued, but Zariel, she stayed quiet. She and Elias were taken to a neutral station on the edge of the human-Zendari borders. Surrounded by diplomats, soldiers, and more cameras than she had ever seen before, but she didn't come to sing for the galaxy anymore. She came to speak the truth. Inside a large council chamber, Zariel stood before the Galactic Assembly. Her silver hair was tied back, her clothes simple, and her baby in her arms. Elias stood behind her, silent and strong. The room waited. Dozens of species, dozens of leaders. Waiting to hear her explanation, she took a breath. "My name is Zariel," she began. "I was once the voice of the stars. Now I speak as a mother." The room murmured, but she continued. "I broke your laws. I disobeyed your rules, but I did not break because I was weak. I broke because I chose love over fear." She lifted the baby. "This is my child. Part Zendari, part human, yes, but fully alive, fully innocent." Some faces in the room turned away. Others leaned forward, but Elias watched her with quiet pride. "I've been used as a symbol," Zariel said, "for power, for pride, for politics, but no more." She looked down at her daughter, who opened her small violet eyes. "I will not raise her in a world that punishes love. I will not let her grow in silence and shame." Then, without warning, she began to sing, not loudly, not with performance, but gently, like a whisper carried across the stars. Her voice wrapped around every ear in the chamber, and every heart. They heard her pain. They heard her strength. They heard her promise. When she finished, the room was silent again, not in anger, but in awe, for once. No one interrupted. Hours passed, then days, then votes, debates, and closed-door meetings. And finally change. The Zendari Council declared Zariel and her child protected. The Galactic Assembly issued new rights for mixed-species children and humans. Were no longer seen as low-class workers or tools. They were acknowledged. And Ilias's name was spoken in halls where no human name had ever been spoken before. In a small, peaceful home on a quiet green moon, Zariel sat on a wooden bench. Her daughter named Lyra played with glowing flowers in the garden. Elias fixed a solar panel nearby, glancing back often with a smile. It had been months since the trial, since the escape, since the birth. Now life had slowed down, but it had never been so full. Zariel turned to Elias. "You stayed when you didn't have to." She said, "You gave me more than protection." He wiped his hands and sat beside her. "You gave me a reason to stay," he replied. "And now? I can't imagine being anywhere else." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Lyra toddled. Over her tiny hands, grabbing at their fingers, her eyes sparkled like stars, pure, curious, fearless. Zariel picked her up and whispered, "You are not a mistake. You are not a secret. You are our beginning." Elias placed a hand on both of them and nodded. "She's going to change everything, and we'll be right beside her." Above them, the stars blinked quietly. No longer watching with judgment, but with wonder. Because somewhere in the galaxy, a song had been sung not to please, not to control, but to heal. And that song belonged to a mother, a human, and a child born of hope.